Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating text called The 10th Flash. It's got this unique idea about a feeling I think we've all had. Why do things sometimes go completely sideways for good people, especially right after they've kind of dropped the ball on something important?
You know that feeling, right? You put off a major task, and then bam, some totally random problem just lands in your lap. Well, according to this text, if you're a person of faith, that might not be a coincidence at all. Let's dig in.
So here's our roadmap. We'll kick things off with the main idea, this divine wake-up call. Then we'll look at the author's own wild story and some incredible examples from his students. We'll also tackle a really big question that comes up before wrapping it all up with a whole new way to think about hardship. All right, first up, what are we even talking about with these strange setbacks? The author makes a pretty bold claim that they're not random, not at all. He says they're a very specific kind of message. He actually calls it a compassionate slap, and that first word, compassionate, is everything. This isn't about punishment for the sake of punishment. It's more like a corrective nudge, you know? It's for sincere people who've just temporarily gotten off track, and it's meant to gently, or maybe not so gently, steer them back to what they're supposed to be doing. And this idea doesn't just come out of thin air. The author points to verses like this one from the Qur'an. The thinking here is pretty straightforward. Isn't it better to get a little course correction for your mistakes right now in this life, instead of having to face all of them in a lump sum later on? This slap is basically a way of clearing the slate early. And to prove his point, the author doesn't just stick with theory. No, he gets really personal, starting with his own life story, which he believes is just full of these compassionate slaps. And this first example is a real doozy. He lays out a clear cause and effect. He says that as long as he was out there teaching, engaging with people, the government pretty much left him alone. But the very moment he decided to retreat from that service, to go live in a cave and focus on his own salvation, the moment he thought, what's it to me? He was arrested and thrown into exile. The slap he received was the exact opposite of the quiet, peaceful life he was looking for. And get this, it wasn't a one-time thing. He saw this clear pattern emerge. Every time he tried to pull back and play it safe, he got pushed further and further into exile, from one town to the next, and then to an even more remote village. In his mind, it was simple. Neglecting his duty directly caused him to lose the very thing he was trying to protect, his peace. So that's his own story, but he doesn't stop there. He builds his case by sharing these incredible stories from his students, arguing that this exact same pattern was playing out all around him. And these stories are so specific, they're kind of hard to ignore. Okay, listen to this one. There's this scribe, Haki Effendi, who's dedicated to writing out sacred texts, but he's having money problems, so he secretly takes on a regular legal case on the side. Almost right away, he breaks the exact finger he uses to write. The way the text interprets it, this was a direct message. Hey, that finger, it's for sacred work, not for courtroom documents. Pick one. Then you have Bakir Effendi, the printer. He was supposed to print this important religious text, but it was going to cost 400 liras. He got cold feet, thinking about the expense. Well, a couple of months go by and 900 liras of his money gets stolen. The slap wasn't just financial. It was weirdly proportional. The loss was more than double the amount he was hesitant to spend on his duty. And one last one, Hafiz Khalid. He had been a scribe, but he put that on pause because he really wanted to be an imam again and wear the traditional turban that goes with the job. So he gets the position, he's acting as the imam for 9 whole months. But in what the text calls a truly bizarre twist, he just could not get official permission to wear the turban. The very symbol of the honor he was seeking was kept from him, seemingly until he got back to his main job. Now, hearing all this probably brings up a pretty big, pretty obvious question. It's a paradox, really, and the author tackles it head-on. Exactly. If these slaps are divine corrections, why do they seem to happen to believers for what seem like pretty minor slip-ups, while at the same time, people who are actively working against them seem to get away with so much more, and sometimes even seem to thrive? It's a fundamental question of fairness, right? The author's answer is this really powerful analogy he calls the 2 courts. Think of it like this. The small mistakes of believers are handled quickly, right here in the local court of this world. The punishments are swift and partial, and their purpose is to purify. But the much bigger crimes of their opponents, those get referred up to the supreme tribunal of the hereafter. Their cases are postponed for a much more serious judgment. So the whole point is this. From this viewpoint, getting hit with immediate hardship isn't a sign you're out of favor. It's actually the opposite. It's a sign that your spiritual account is being balanced in real time, while other, much bigger accounts are being deferred for a final, much more serious reckoning down the line.
And all of this leads to a pretty radical new way of looking at our entire experience of life in this world. The author ties this whole philosophy together by quoting a famous hadith, a saying from the Prophet Muhammad. Now, at first glance, it sounds pretty strange, but it perfectly captures everything we've been talking about.
So let's actually break that down. Why would this world be a prison for a believer? Well, because compared to the ultimate freedom and joy of the next life, this world, with all its tests and corrections, is a place of confinement. And why is it a paradise for the unbeliever? Because, in a way, this is as good as it gets. Any rewards are given here, and the real judgment is postponed, making this life look like a paradise compared to what comes next.
And that right there is the core takeaway from the 10th flash. It's this idea that adversity, those weird setbacks, those compassionate slaps, they aren't just random, meaningless suffering. They're actually purposeful, compassionate course corrections designed to keep you on the right path. And that leaves us with a pretty powerful thought to chew on. Whether you subscribe to this specific theology or not, it offers a really different lens to view our own lives. What if the very things we think are holding us back are actually steering us exactly where we need to go? Thanks for exploring this with us.